Hello and welcome to today's TechSoup webinar called Mapping Your Impact, a Case from Humanitarian Assistance. I'm Dawn Krause. I'm a TechSoup webinar producer and I'll be your facilitator for today. Looks like we have about 42 people online. We're expecting a couple more. We have some housekeeping issues that we need to take care of before we move into our content for today, our talk about GIS. So today we're going to be interacting with you via the chat, and that is located in the lower left-hand corner of your interface. So please, whenever you feel the need, if you have a technical question as well as a question about our content, please put that into the chat and we'll address it right away if it's a technical issue, or if it's content related, we'll get to it at some point in our talk, hopefully. All lines are muted on your end as a participant, so you don't have to worry about any background noise there. Should you lose your internet connection, which I hope you don't, you can reconnect using the link that was originally emailed to you. If you lose your phone connection, same thing, just redial and join again. Sometimes with ReadyTalk, the interface will freeze up, and so that is an instance where you would want to get out and get back in via the email link. There's also the ReadyTalk support number there. If none of those things work, then ReadyTalk support, they're very helpful, so feel free to give them a call. Today's session is being recorded. It will be on our archived webinars site, the TechSoup.org Learning Center link, but don't worry about remembering that link. You'll receive a link to the presentation as well as all the resources that we're going to talk about today. And after the webinar, if we don't get to questions today, we will continue discussion in our community forum. And I will send you a link to the actual community forum in that email follow-up that I'll send later today. If you are tweeting, you can tweet with hashtag TechSoup. Who is TechSoup? For those of you who may not be familiar with us, we are a 501c3 nonprofit organization, just like many of you. And as of June 2010, we provided we served more than 127,000 organizations, and we saved you almost $2 billion in IT expenses all around the world. And our mission is really to help you with the technology, resources, and knowledge you need in order for you to fulfill your missions. And hopefully we're doing some of that today by presenting some great webinar content. Our presenters today are Dr. Andrew Schroeder and David Gadsden. I'm going to introduce them a little more fully in just a second, giving some bio info. I am your facilitator again, Dawn Krause, assisting with chat and questions in the background, Stephanie Girding, John Rush, and Ariel Gilbert-Knight, all from TechSoup. And just to introduce David, who's going to be giving content first. David is an account executive for Esri, focusing on nonprofit, Native American, and international development communities. He joined Esri in 2002 and has since supported communities on topics ranging from disaster relief, environmental conservation, international development and diplomacy, energy transmission, and federal and tribal governance. David coordinates Esri's nonprofit organization program, which aims to empower nonprofits and NGOs around the globe with GIS technology. And Andrew, who's going to be presenting content second, is the Director of Research and Analysis at Direct Relief International. Beginning in 2008, he initiated Direct Relief's program in geospatial analytics and GIS. Since that time, he's worked closely with a wide range of Direct Relief's corporate and clinical partners to improve understanding of humanitarian program planning and outcome evaluation through data analysis and visualization. Phew, they're busy guys. Just to go over briefly the agenda, we are going to do 3 polls to try to get some audience interaction and feedback on how you're using these types of GIS technologies and even Esri's products before we move on with the content. So then David is going to take over. He's going to talk about Esri's nonprofit program and the suite of tools that are available through TechSoup. He's also going to cover Community Analyst, which I think is a newer product for them. It's a cloud-based tool. Then I'm going to switch it over to Andrew, and he's going to discuss Direct Relief's use of web mapping tools in the 2010 Haiti earthquake disaster recovery effort. And he's also going to talk about his collaboration with UNFPA and the development of the global fistula map. And then we're going to have a Q&A from participants, hopefully with your wonderful questions that you will put into the chat for us today. Welcome, Andrew and David.
Thank you.
Thank you.
I'm going to go ahead and launch our first poll, which hopefully you should be seeing. And it is the question, can you describe your current use or interest in GIS? So just tell us a little bit about what your interest in this webinar is, or what your current use is in your organization. And so we have some general areas here that you can simply click one of the boxes and submit. And for this one, you can actually submit more than one response. Looks like we're getting good feedback here. Oh, lots of people using it for project mapping. Quite a bit in the strategic planning and also mapping impacts. Andrew will be happy to hear that. Okay, I'm glad to see that there's people actually doing this. I'm going to close that poll if it looks like we're done there. I'm going to move on to our next one. What types of Esri mapping technology are you currently using? And of course, you can always use the option that you're not currently using it. Oh no, we have a lot not currently using it. Maybe by the end of this webinar, you'll be interested in. Okay, so overwhelmingly not currently using it. Okay, I'm going to close that one and move on with our next one. Well, what types of Esri mapping technology are you currently using? What I did, sorry. Here we go. Which version of ArcGIS Desktop are you using? So we might not get too many responses here because it didn't look like many of you were using Esri products yet. So you said you weren't using it. Okay. Looks like a couple maybe using 10.1, version 10. David, I hope that was helpful for you to move on with your portion of the talk, but I'm going to close that poll.
You bet. Yeah, it's really helpful actually.
Turn it over to you. Take it away.
Okay, great. Well, thanks everyone. And it's really wonderful to have an opportunity to speak with you today. I really am just doing a little bit of an introduction. Andrew's the real presenter today, and what he'll be doing is showing you actually how his organization has put this body of technology to work. My role at Esri is to coordinate our support for nonprofits globally. That includes our relationship with TechSoup and the offerings that we currently have in place. What I won't be doing today is giving you sort of an overview of each specific product and offering that Esri is offering, both through TechSoup and through our own program. The reason being is we're in the process of releasing a lot of new offerings through TechSoup, and so that will be a webcast a little bit later in the year so far as the total offering that's out there. What I did want to do, and I think it's pretty relevant seeing that many of you are new to Esri and new to potentially professional grade GIS, is that I spend kind of a little bit of time just giving you a high level overview of who we are as an organization and what's possible. And then from there we'll have the opportunity for Andrew to show us in detail sort of how this technology may apply to work like the work that you folks are doing out there in your own organizations. So a little bit of introduction of Esri. We were founded in 1969 by Jack Dangerman and his wife Laura. Jack had studied landscape architecture at Harvard University and had come out and had some ideas about computer mapping really making a difference in the world and helping people better understand where they were working, where they were building things, where they were delivering programs, etc. And so he formed a nonprofit actually with a small loan from Laura's parents, and Esri was born. That's the Environmental Systems Research Institute. After a few years of supporting a handful of organizations that were using computers to manage landscapes and activities and to develop basically the origins of computer mapping, those organizations came back to Jack Dangerman in a user group meeting with about 20-some people in the room and said, Jack, we love you, but we just want to buy your software. And Jack said, well, that's great, and I've actually heard him tell this story. That's great, but you're really going to have to tell me what to build. And we can make that change, but it's going to be a partnership. And with that sort of value base, Esri is going to be a very large, very successful organization. And we're a privately held software company. That user conference today that we had, in 2012 had over 14,000 attendees. Were used very broadly all around the world. And when it comes to professional grade mapping systems, Esri leads that marketplace by a wide margin. If you're interested in finding the nearest restaurant or more consumer type mapping applications, there's a lot of other brands that might come to mind before Esri. But when you're looking at data that you need to sort of own and manage on your own and not hand that content over to a different organization or platform, or if you're looking at really integration of data from many different sources, public, private, open, etc., then that's really where Esri's technology excels. So our nonprofit support is a serious commitment. As I said, we began as a nonprofit. More than 20 years ago, Esri founded a conservation program that was actually much more broad than conservation to provide grants and support for organizations around the world. We've extended that through our relationship with TechSoup. We also have our own offering you can learn more about at esri.com/nonprofit. Some of the technologies, individual software packages you might be interested that will be available soon through TechSoup, you might find that we have available today through our own offering, and that includes Community Analyst, which we'll talk about in detail in just a moment. So a conservative estimate is well over $150 million in software donations. That's actually a pretty low figure. Now, what does Esri offer technically? And what we offer as a platform is a complete solution for creating geographic information, bringing geographic information in from different sources, taking data that's in spreadsheets and turning it into what we would call geographic information through mapping it or associating it to an address or a coordinate that places it on the globe. Our offering extends across nearly every type of phone that's out there. We have free software for running on your iPhone or your Android phone or your Windows phone. You can go into the app stores of those platforms and bring Esri technology onto them. That will open you up to a world of available maps and literally tens of thousands of organizations and individuals from around the world that are publishing and sharing mapped geographic information through Esri's platform. And if you need to sort of take that kind of infrastructure, the ability to share maps across your organization and maybe do that in-house through your own IT resources, we also have server technologies that you could install and operate in that fashion. I'm going to talk in a moment about how cloud computing has really transformed our entire platform. But if you're a developer, you'd like to just take a few components of Esri's platform, develop something custom that's specific to your needs, you have a wide array of options there, and that's a community that we serve very closely. So if you look at the differences between consumer mapping, again, I sort of, flippantly referred to sort of finding the nearest restaurant or whatever it might be, and professional mapping, sort of what are the differences or what are the core capabilities that an Esri platform would offer that you wouldn't find in a consumer platform? And it's this sort of total ecosystem of management of geographic information. It's managing your data, whether you've collected it, whether you found it from another source, whether you're having a transaction with another system, a financial system or a fundraising system within your organization, sort of keeping things up to date, backed up, if appropriately secure, so you have the right sort of eyes on the data and the right editors keeping it up to date. Using that to develop solutions for planning and analysis, and you'll see some of this from Andrew. how you can take that information and see where you're delivering your programs, compare that to potentially other data sources on poverty or other indicators to see how that impact is working and potentially shift your assets around using that map as a backdrop. Taking all of that into the field, pulling your phone out of your pocket, seeing what has been delivered in that area, getting some details about a potential new donor, being able to find that donor and walk up to their doorstep with some offer you might have. All of that extension of the GIS platform or the Geographic Information Platform is the kind of thing that Esri's ArcGIS platform enables. Visualization, maybe you're going to make beautiful maps for a report. Maybe you're going to provide a web map for your donors to show all of the impact that you're making in a given, let's say, following a hurricane response. You have assets that programs you're delivering across a given territory. You might have photographs and graphs and charts and even time-based data that shows your response over time. All of those things are possible when you have well-structured data and when you leverage the whole platform to take the devices into the field to collect the photos. That can be brought together into a dashboard or a rich web map that allows your donors or even your beneficiaries to review and explore the services you're providing. And then increasingly, the migration of social media into that geospatial domain. So in our web mapping templates, which I won't go much into detail on today, you can take that data that you've created and you can basically pour it into a template that does the photos and graphing and interaction that I'm referring to. You can also link in Twitter or link in Facebook so that you can do a geographic search of who's tweeting what in a given geography. So you can also give your users the ability to geographically comment or express a need or desire on a web map that you may put up, and that becomes meaningful information that you're soliciting from your community of practice. So it sounds like a lot, right? It's really enterprise grade stuff, and so one of the critiques of Esri over the years is, well, that's really interesting, and if you're a PhD, I'm sure you can have a lot of fun with that, but that's not really relevant to me. And again, I've been at Esri for 10 years. I've been in the industry for 20, academically or otherwise, and the radical change that's happening to us underfoot right now is the migration to cloud computing. And so all of these sort of capabilities I'm describing, not long ago, even a year or so ago, if you wanted to accomplish those, you had to have the wherewithal to install your own GIS server, install your own database, configure that database for appropriate access and use. And you're looking at a solid day or two, and Andrew's probably laughing right now because of the amount of time that he spent to work on the platform he'll show you in a moment. But it took some effort, and it was expensive, in staff time and resources and hardware and other things. So what's happening today is Esri's taking 40-plus years of software development into enterprise GIS as a platform, and we're migrating that into the cloud. And so that allows us to basically enable us to provide that operational enterprise system for you by just turning it on and just giving you a view into an operational platform that Esri's already stood up and configured and is supporting tens of thousands and soon hundreds of thousands of our accounts. So really, cloud computing takes Esri into a totally different environment, and many of you, or a handful of you out there that are using the desktop and doing good mapping, that remains extremely important. But that work doesn't need to live on your desktop any longer. You can take that map or even that analysis that you've conducted, and you can publish it to the cloud and share it across your organization or share it publicly. So arcgis.com is Esri's cloud framework, or it's a place where you can go to learn more about that framework. We refer to the entire platform as ArcGIS Online. And there's a lot that can be said about this. What I would encourage you to do when you visit the site is sort of scroll down to the bottom and just open up the personal use maps, look around for some data that is of interest to you, some places that are of interest to you. We have base maps from around the world. That includes Microsoft Microsoft's Bing image and street maps, Esri's image and street maps, OpenStreetMap, beautiful map of the world from National Geographic. And you can actually take your own data that has potentially addresses in it. So if you have an Excel table with addresses and places you're working, you can open up the map in ArcGIS.com and you can drag that Excel table onto it. You save it initially as a CSV just to flatten any of the sort of fancy Excel bits that would confuse us. And you can drag that CSV onto the map, and you'll have a map that you can then share. You can put on your Facebook page. You can tweet. You can form a group around that and invite your colleagues to participate. And it's really quite powerful. And this again, is one of the offerings that we'll be bringing to TechSoup. Everything I just described is free. That ability to create maps, share them, tweet them, etc., that all works great today. If you'd like to take kind of what you're seeing in that entire platform and not have it be Esri anything, but just have it be your organization's mapping platform, that's also possible. So that becomes a bit of a subscription that we discount, and we'll again have a real favorable offering through TechSoup. And that allows you to rebrand this as your site. So you have your own map gallery, you have your own colors, your own logos, etc. And it gives you all of those capabilities I'm describing. So really, I mean, in the industry, we think about enterprise GIS, and it's the difference between taking a desktop mapping bit of software and making a PDF or making a map, or just doing something on a desktop, and the role of GIS within a broader information management framework within your organization. And so that's the kind of thing that us geeks in the industry get really excited about, is not GIS just for a report, but GIS as a platform for better understanding and allocation and analysis. And really, ArcGIS Online gives us the ability to just turn that analysis on, or turn that platform on, to enable you to experience that without those server investments and without that really deep need for capability. So we call this sort of the one map, right? That map, that's a map that maybe you publish in the desktop, maybe you drag a CSV file onto the web. That same map that you save from that CSV file, you pick up your iPhone or your Android phone with the free Esri app, you log in to ArcGIS Online, you interact with that map, you potentially update new information and take photos, and that goes right back up onto this web map that others may be viewing. I just recently had this experience in Tanzania, working on a little project for World Vision, where we happened to have, it was a bit of a chaotic pilot ad hoc thing, but we had an iPhone and a Windows phone and 2 Android phones, and we were able to work in a very rural community and go about and visit all of the great work that World Vision had done to dig wells and give people cows and all of the bed nets for mosquitoes, all the things they do, and visit them, snap a photo, answer a quick question about what was done there, and 4 different vehicles, 4 different phones in different locations. All that data was uploaded directly to a web map that other folks were able to view. We're now taking that into a more rich web mapping platform, so donors can see how important the work that's being done out there is. And it was a really neat experience. So if that can work in rural Tanzania, I know it can work for you in the United States. If you're working in more challenging international environments, definitely let me know, and we can help kind of explore what kind of architectures might work for you. So finally, community analysts. So the other opportunity with the cloud is that sending you a very powerful bit of software, but saying good luck finding data is sort of the approach of maybe the 1990s, right? Like you got some expensive GIS software and it opened up and it was just a blank white page. You had to then start the really hard work of getting data organized. So community analyst is Esri's effort to organize a very large repository of data. And I can kind of just paste the link in here quickly that will give you an opportunity to go poke around perhaps after the presentation. Let's see. And I'd encourage you to look at the data page in particular. There's like 11,000 different variables on things like income, employment, poverty, nutrition, etc. And what that allows you to do is just visit that cloud platform, work with that data, bring in your own data, produce maps, do analysis, and it's something you can access again through this cloud subscription approach rather than having to wrestle with that data on your own. So I'll stop there. Maybe take 1 or 2 questions, but then let Andrew carried away.
Thanks, David. We actually only so far have one question that came in, and John Rush from TechSoup might want to come in here as well. But Emily asked, what kind of special plans are available for nonprofits?
So I think through plans I'm assuming, Emily, that this is about the ArcGIS Online subscription and sort of the hosted plan offerings. Otherwise, you can go onto TechSoup's site and see what the software software licensing options are for desktop and other things. So the plan offerings, generally speaking, is that we do a 50% discount. That's what we have today. That will be, again, we're in the process of rolling that out through TechSoup, and there's a few other, kind of logistical pieces to get in place to make that happen. But that's generally what we're able to offer. There's a real cost here to third parties, to other cloud providers that Esri, is on the hook for. So, and where you need that subscription specifically is to take ArcGIS Online and brand it for your own organization, as well as create GIS layers that you can edit with phones and with websites and with other things. So that's when you need to think about a subscription. If you just want to create an account, create maps, bring CSV files and shape files onto those maps and save them and share them and form groups, that's free. Now it's free for personal use. We also extend that to nonprofits. So there's a lot you can do for free. There's a lot you can discover and share and even rebrand. And what I mean by that is if you save a map, in the sharing options in the map viewer, you can choose to share those on Twitter or Facebook. You can also create a new web application, which takes that map that you've discovered, potentially with some of your own data, and wraps it into another simple sort of web map viewer. So all free. And so I'd encourage you to start there and then let us know specifically. And you're correct, Sandra, that there is a limit to the free storage, which is 2 gigabytes per user. And then when you get into the subscriptions, that increases dramatically. I'm just kind of trying to glance at some other questions here. How up-to-date are the data? So we're continually working on updates. They do major releases twice a year to the community analyst data sets. There's literally hundreds of different providers that we're bringing together. One quick comment on that is that we do also projections. So we have a team of professional demographers that study not only what's coming from the Census Department and data that we acquire from other organizations, but we do our own modeling of what's coming in regard to demographic change. And that's generally a pretty high-end marketing data set you would pay a premium price for. We're one of the only entities that then when there is real data from a census, we publish our results. And so we actually show you how close we were with our estimates. And so if that's of assistance, if that's important, let me know. Otherwise, I'll probably take a pause there. Technical support is available through the TechSoup licensing. That's not the case for the desktop through the Esri program. But there's some other nuances there I won't go into, and price is one of them. But why don't I stop there just to allow plenty of time for Andrew, and I'll also paste my email address in here. If there's any questions you need me to follow up on directly, please feel free to reach out to me.
Thanks, David. Great information. Andrew, you want to take it away?
Sure, thanks. And thanks, Dave, the Esri nonprofit program in particular. We make pretty extensive use of GIS at Direct Relief, and I will say that there's just no way we could do it without the support that the Esri nonprofit program has been able to offer us, and TechSoup in general, for a whole variety of technology needs at Direct Relief. So it's been great to work with you. I'm going to go through some examples of web mapping that we've been doing. Start off with a little bit about Direct Relief, what we're using mapping for, a couple of projects that we've put in place to help us to think through some of our work and to communicate what we do. the difference that our programs have made. And I'm going to close with a look at community analysts, an example from community analysts. We are an international organization, but we do a lot of work in the United States, and community analysts has been really valuable in terms of being able to help us think through program planning and evaluation in that U.S. context. So Direct Relief is a global humanitarian medical material assistance organization. We're headquartered in Santa Barbara, California. And to just a bit of context for where our work with mapping fits in, I mean, we're a channel for essential medicines and medical supplies to get to people in need all over the world. So we work with private pharmaceutical and medical suppliers to identify needed material and efficiently and effectively get it to medical infrastructure in need all over the world. So everything that we do has a spatial dimension, and that was where GIS became a really sort of obvious fit for us in terms of thinking through how we analyze our programs and how we communicate what we're doing. In order to accomplish our work, we use a lot of information technology, and Esri sits within an ecosystem that for us is dominated by SAP, which is our enterprise data system. As I'll show you in a second with the map that we did for the Haitian earthquake, one of our goals has been to, SAP is tracking all of our transactions, so all the material that, all the pharmaceuticals, all the medicines that we're moving to people in need around the world is being tracked through SAP, and we've linked GIS directly into that enterprise data set in order to be able to show how those transactions are changing over time and where that material is ending up and how that links to the people in need that we're trying to help. In our case, it sits, we developed this to sit within that ecosystem, and we've been moving steadily towards doing things that are also more sort of semi-autonomous in the kind of cloud environment that Dave was describing earlier. We're also thinking about this from the standpoint of an interface with our partnerships. We maintain, in that context, a web portal that facilitates a lot of the communications that allows us to be able to understand what medical need is in a humanitarian context. And as you'll see with the global fistula map I'll show you in a minute too, this facilitates a survey interaction with us so that we can actually not just identify transactions that are working through our enterprise system, but also survey our partners and survey institutions that we're looking at how to assess for their humanitarian need about sort of what conditions are affecting them, what kinds of material they're in need of, and how we can actually formulate programs that are designed to help them. So give you a little bit of context for what you're going to see then in the technology side. I'm going to look at a couple of different web maps. We use ArcGIS Desktop to build the base maps, and ArcGIS Server to serve out web services that feed our online maps. The first map that you're going to see is built with something called Adobe Flex Viewer, which is an Adobe product supported by Esri, and that is a really simple way to be able to produce very high quality web maps that are hosted online. And the next map that you'll see will be something that we built using the JavaScript API. So you'll see the differences in kind of how they look. They're same concept, but they're built with two different APIs, two different ways of doing web mapping. And I can talk about why those differences are important and kind of what they do in some different ways. So in the first context, and let me actually share my screen here, give you a sense of the actual application. Hopefully this works. Okay, so this is a map that Direct Relief built in 2010 following the Haitian earthquake in January of that year. After the earthquake, we began identifying partners that we could transfer medical assistance to. We wanted to be able to do rapid assessment and to be able to track where all of our assistance was going. Our primary goal here was thinking about program transparency. So, in this case, we were looking at how do we show in as great a detail as we possibly can the breakdown of assistance that has gone to each place where we're actually offering medical assistance. So we put the points on the map and linked them back into our back-end database and allowed for a way to navigate that material, which can often be, I think, a little bit obscure to people. I mean, we often don't really know very much. We're not told very much about what kind of assistance is reaching what area, particularly under crisis situations. It's at a very high level of aggregation. So here we're actually pulling in from our inventory what kind of material went to which place and allow folks to actually navigate that and see what the breakdown is on for each site that we're looking at. What kind of material did they receive? What is the general value of that in terms of wholesale valuation and the ways that in-kind donations are valued, and can measure that against the overall distribution of aid to the country and give it a quick sort, so that if we want to see just where medical instruments were sent, we can sort the map really fast, and we can sort of just see the same information broken down by product hierarchy here, so that we're looking at a slice of that overall data. This is helpful for us from a program planning point of view, from thinking about where our material, so what's the different landscape for different kinds of materials that we're sending. It's also sort of really valuable in terms of thinking about communications and program transparency. So, wanting to be as transparent as it's feasible for us to be about where every dollar of assistance has been spent, and what kind of assistance that's meant, and where are the organizations that are using that aid. And it allows us, in this case, we're only using a fairly basic set of additional layers, but we can also bring in layers showing changing weather patterns, web services that were developed by the UN, say, to show detailed geographic information about the country. So, I will say that that is the first web map that we built, and we really derived it from an application that was developed by the state of Maryland, which is always surprising to people when we say it. But this is an application. It was an Adobe Flex viewer application the state of Maryland built to track stimulus funding following the passage of the American Recovery and Reinvestment Act. And one of the really great things that Esri does is to facilitate the posting of that code online. So as we were in rapid development mode after the earthquake, as 1,000,001 things were happening, we decided to build this application. If we had to build it right from the ground up at that time, it would have been virtually impossible for us. But because we had the base code that had already been written and was available free online, we just took that code, modified it for things that are useful to us, and changed the icons and posted it online. And within about 3 weeks worth of work, we actually had an online map that was functional and that folks were using to be able to look at where our assistance was going, how much it was valued at, and what kind of help was reaching people in need during the post-earthquake experience. So we built from that, more applications that were built off of the Flex platform. We were, in this case, again, this is an application that was developed for hurricane preparedness in the United States. Direct Relief supports safety net clinics around the country, and in the Gulf Coast, which is hit by hurricanes virtually every year, we pre-position medical material so that when an event like the recent hurricane that hit the Gulf Coast happens, we actually have material that is already on hand so that folks are prepared to be able to face a surge capacity for their patient population when they need it. We wanted to be able to track where those partners were, and then to have a read on how storms are coming as they happen. So this is current information that you see that's being pulled in from NOAA. Same technology as the Haiti map, different code package that's actually building this, and it allows us to also bring in say some additional layers here, looking at should bring up takes a second, say evacuation routes. So this is pulling from a web service that FEMA publishes that we can grab from FEMA's website, and can look at where our clinics are relative to where posted evacuation routes are. And so again, this is something that we host as a public service that communicates where we're actually supporting or pre-positioning material. And it also becomes a way for us to think about how an event is unfolding as it happens. So say we want to understand which of our clinics is on an evacuation route. This is because it's on a web service. As it changes, it updates our map, and we don't actually have to go in and do that updating. It's just reading off the web service. So that's I think a slightly deeper take on what we had started to do in the Haiti map, which was just to be transparent about the transactional information. Here we can link out to the website for a particular clinic, give some information about where they are and what kind of clinic they are, and then also bring in real-time information that's changing that will show you the situation as it happens. And again, this is all essentially open source code running off of web services that are published online from a variety of different sources. Our most recent project has been a project that is a collaboration with UNFPA, the United Nations Population Fund, and the Fistula Foundation to respond to the occurrence of obstetric fistula around the world. Obstetric fistula, for those that don't know, is a really awful injury that happens to women in very low resource settings. It involves a tear that does not heal, and where women experiences very severe incontinence, and often this can last for many, many, many years. It's a very simple surgery to repair, and so it's really something that should never happen. But it's one of the real signs of failing obstetric systems around the world. And one of our goals is not just to provide assistance during emergencies, but to provide assistance all the time to people that need it. And in this case, to really provide information that folks can build off in terms of assessing where problems are, how they are distributed across space, and what we can know about them to be able to really develop programs that will address the problem. So this, again, I told you, was a JavaScript API application, again, being driven by web services. And the goal with the map, this was built off of, the base data was built off of a survey that we were able to execute with the assistance of UNFPA, where we sent a survey out to a combination of different kinds of providers. Some of them were fixed infrastructure clinics. Some of them were surgeons that actually travel between clinics. Quite a bit of fistula surgical repair is actually conducted by essentially traveling surgeons that provide care at more than one facility. And we wanted to know just, not a whole lot is known about the prevalence of fistula. There are studies, but they're kind of scattered and not really have not been systematically connected. And this is the first time that we were looking at being able to put those facilities on the map and really see what happens at them. So, first you will see that we've geocoded all the facilities, and this will give you some base information from the most recent year that we had survey information from, 2010. How many patients received fistula repair, how many beds are at this facility, how many surgeons are on site, where is this facility, what kind of facility is it, and let me zoom into Uganda, where quite a lot of the services are provided. Some basic weighting in terms of here the variables that you'll see on the side about how many patients they actually saw. And one of the things we wanted to be able to do that we couldn't do before was to filter that data so that we could get down to a subset of the population really quickly. So one of the things that the JavaScript API let us do really fast was to apply a set of filters down to this information. So if I only want to know really high population areas, I can remove all those those lower population ones, everyone from 100 patients and less, and I can see where the really big providers are really clearly. And I can jump to a country. Since we're asking not just about patients, we're asking about surgical capacity. Where are surgeons? If I only want to see places that have a fistula surgeon, I can unclick, meaning a permanent surgeon. I can unclick this answer, so this will only show me large institutions that have a fistula surgeon. From our point of view, this is looking at what kinds of institutions do we need to support. This has also been extremely useful for for other partners that are aiming to look at program planning around this area. So the Islamic Development Bank has used this map to be able to plan interventions in maternal health services and the role that fistula repair plays within maternal health services, and likewise other NGOs. And then, being able to, as Dave was saying earlier, put additional layers in here to really be able to look at some sense of the distribution of certain variables, in this case, relative to the survey data that we've been collecting. In this case, looking at critical variables that are predictors of the need for obstetric fistula repair services. So, like I said, it's an indicator of failing systems for maternal care. So in this case, the likelihood that a woman doesn't have a skilled attendant at the moment of delivery is one of the predictors, and we wanted to look at that, in this case, from a country level, and seeing how that matches up against where we're actually seeing reports of high incidence of fistula repair surgery. And we're going to be iterating on this map so that we can update the data, make it exportable, and allow for a lot more sort of rich interaction. I think I'm almost out of time, but I wanted to just quickly jump back to then a project that we've been doing, like I said, in the United States, looking at community analysts. So again, in the program planning and evaluation mode, we support safety net clinics, which are base level primary care institutions. This is looking at the city of Detroit, where we support roughly 23 institutions around the city, and these are points that represent some of those clinics. And data is often, the biggest stumbling block. Data acquisition and management is often the biggest stumbling block to being able to rapidly do meaningful analysis. So, recently I've been thinking about the role that the recent collapse in the housing sector played within poor communities that we're attempting to help in terms of their medical infrastructure. So, what can I know really fast about the communities that the clinics we're supporting are actually located in, the patients that they're actually serving that are proximate to those facilities. So, this brings in, really quickly 2010 household income status from the 2010 census, and again, posted online so I don't have to actually manage it, to filter that down to get to exactly the census tracts that I'm interested in. So these are folks that have average household income less than $10,000 annually. So these are the poorest census tracts in the city of Detroit, and you can see a number of the clinics that we support are either right in there or around there. So that looks at it from the standpoint of income. If I wanted to then think about that from the standpoint of vacant housing and the role that, say, the collapse in housing has had within these neighborhoods, pulling in information, again, in this case from the census, looking at the proportion of housing units within a census tract that have 25% or greater, or less than 25% vacancy rates. As of 2010, this is what the landscape looks like for the housing units that are in the neighborhoods that the clinics we're trying to support serve. But it also they've done these projections which allow us to sort of time series this out really quickly. So looking at the estimates that are at least within Esri's read on the census data about how the housing market is going to change within the core downtown city of Detroit. And you can see that at least the projection, spatial distribution of that projection looks pretty bad. And we want to be able to then zero in on particular clinics that are in some of those worst areas. And so being able to then zero in and pull a report really for the neighborhood that one clinic is located in. So it puts a buffer around there, and I can pull stats for each one of those areas that's proximate to that clinic. So that lets me quickly actually compile a read on that neighborhood and not just the stats at the clinic, which is really valuable in that sense for collaboration with other organizations. They're trying to forecast out what's going to be needed and what are going to be the real hotspots that we're going to have to think about supporting as we go on into the future. So that's an overview of how we've been using GIS software, and I think we have some more time for questions. I didn't take too long.
Thanks, Andrew. Wow, those were some hefty projects there. Looks like we do have a couple questions coming in. I think David might have answered Andrew's question, but if you had any comment there. She said, so community analysts provided data for the Detroit maps versus some functionality of the map. David answered both.
Yeah, that's right. The the data is hosted. It's all U.S. Census data. You can download it yourself from the census, but the census is gigantic, and getting that organized in the GIS is often really cumbersome. So it's nice to have it on tap. And then at least those basic GIS functions are embedded in Community Analyst. So being able to buffer it and then pull a report for the buffer, like how many people are within 5 kilometers of that point, say, is something that's embedded in Community Analyst, and a bunch more.
Yeah, exactly. So it's not only just the data, it's the ability to create your own service areas, or to bring in your own locations where you're working. So when we talk about service area, it's not only maybe selecting an existing geography and saying, okay, I'm in these zip codes or whatnot, but you can do what's called a drive time. So from a place that you start with, a given address, you say, I'm going to drive 30 minutes or an hour and a half from here, and the software will actually run out on every possible road network, every possible direction, and then create an area for you, which is the area that you can reach in 30 minutes, hour and a half from that location. And then you can use that area basically as a cookie cutter to go cut down through those 11,000 variables that are in Community Analyst to say, what's going on in this geography for nutrition or poverty or income or whatever else.
I see one question came in earlier about web services. Is that real-time mapping information? Real-time mapping information comes in the form of a web service. So either a WMS or a KML network link, something where it's being hosted by a service that's on the internet. And this is one of the real, they're called Open Geospatial Consortium standards. So it's one of the real advantages of a cloud environment is that other folks are maintaining that internet connection, and you point your web map to that source, and that source will read the information and display it. And as it changes, you're not maintaining the change. You're just maintaining the connection. I see a question here about does the accuracy of mapping decline in rural areas? I think historically that was the case. I think as the example that Dave, was talking about earlier, say in Tanzania. I mean, and at the point where it was really difficult to get a cell phone signal in a rural area, it was difficult to be able to do accurate point mapping. I mean, a lot of that has changed lately, and so the accuracy of point locations in rural areas has gone up substantially. And then, the other thing that's become, I think, really important for mapping of rural areas has been, the increasing distribution of accurate satellite imagery. There's a variety of different sources. And some of those actually are, in the case of emergencies, are actually dialed up to an even higher level of accuracy for the international humanitarian community. But that availability of satellite imagery and then of road information like OpenStreetMap, which is actually user contributed information that actually has accurate information for a number of very rural areas in the world, has become much more widely available. So I think it probably used to be the case, and it still is to some extent, obviously relative to sort of core urban areas, but it's gotten a lot better.
Thank you so much, Andrew and David. We actually are 1 minute over, and I do want to be respectful of people's time. We did have some additional questions that came in. So thank you so much for what you presented today, and I know that you will help us with the additional questions onto the community forum, which we'll provide everyone a link to the community forum in the follow-up email that we will send. I just want to go ahead and close things out. There is an evaluation on the webinar we would love for you to fill out. We really do value your feedback, so please do fill that out for us. And thank you to our presenters. Thank you to our participants. Thanks so much to our behind-the-scenes folks from TechSoup who are helping us on the chat. An email will be sent to you with the slides as well as the archived version of this presentation and all of the resources that we talked about today. Please do, if a survey pops up as you exit, please do fill that out as well. Thanks again, guys.